Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be the open reel tape deck primer that I spoke of a couple of weeks back when I was first doing the unboxing video for the MC1502. So here they are, my two open reel tape decks. The deck on the left is the Tiak X1000r and the unit on the right is the Tascam Br20. They're a little bit different in the fact that the left-hand tape deck, the Teac, is a 4-track deck, and the right-hand tape deck is a 2-track deck. So I'll get into some of these things and we'll go over a few of the specs and some of the details on them. Not going to get too heavily into it, just something to sort of refresh your memories about these old machines, or if you don't really know much about them, and give you a little bit of information about what they are and how they work. So it's probably easier for me just to start here with the right-hand tape deck. This is the Tascam Br20. This is a 2-track machine. It was probably manufactured somewhere in the late 1990s. I think Tascam manufactured this up until sometime in the early 2000s, maybe 2003 or 4 is when they were discontinued. So this machine would be the very last open reel tape deck that Tascam made, to the best of my knowledge. And it's a good unit, a very, very, very smooth tape handling machine. I like it quite a bit. And it was designed more for professional use, whereas the Teac unit is really purely a home consumer of tape machine for just someone who's an enthusiast that wants to do recording work off of their vinyl records. But this machine was really more designed for radio station, radio broadcast, video post-production. That's what's stated prominently on the very cover of the manual. And it has features in it that would be really mostly designed for that type of work. But it also happens to be a very good home recording tape deck. So let's get into some of the things about it. Now, I've kind of taken some notes. What I'll point out first is that, and on both of these tape decks, this is 1/4 inch tape. All right, the width of the tape is 1/4 inch. It's 1 mil thick. And so basically what a 2-track deck does is it takes this 1/4 inch width of tape and essentially just divides it into two, into 1/8 inch each side. So on a left channel and a right channel, it gets recorded onto that tape, and it only will play in one forward direction. You cannot reverse this, and there is no side 2 on a 2-track deck, okay? So the difference is because of the fact that you're recording on a little bit more width of tape, you're actually going to be able, you have more tape to saturate with the signal, so the sound quality surely would be better. Plus the fact that this machine also runs at 15 inches per second. And the faster the tape runs, then the less tape hiss, the less noise is going to wind up getting into the tape. But the downside to a 15 inch per second speed is that it tends to saturate low bass, less than like a 7.5 inch per second signal would do. So there is a drawback as far as that. I don't really notice it much myself, to be quite honest with you. All right, so some of the features of the deck are, I guess first and foremost, what I'd like to do is just refer to my notes. Let me stand back a little bit here. And so this is a 1/4 inch 2-track tape deck. It's a 3-head machine. And what that is basically underneath this cap right here, there's an erase head, a record head, and a reproduce or a tape head under there. It's a 3-head machine, all right? It has supports 10.5 inch reels. As you can see, the metal reels are 10.5 inches. But it also supports, and you can use an 11.1 inch pancake. So what a pancake would be, it's similar to the metal reel that you see here, except it doesn't have the metal cover on the exterior side of it. The rails that are on the side of the unit, on each side, and you can see the hole down here, that is designed so that you can put this in a rack and then sit it more horizontally. When you're using a pancake that doesn't have the metal exterior, the distance that's in the tape itself between, there's a finger amount of space where there is no tape. With the metal reel gone, you can fill that with tape. So you can get that extra bit of tape, 11.1 inches. Next part of it, I would say, is the fact that it's a heavy unit. It weighs 61 3/4 pounds. It has a frequency response from 35 hertz to 22 kilohertz. Plays at 15 inch per second or 7.5 inch per second. The manual gives you no specifications, by the way, for the 7.5 inch per second speed. Has a signal to noise ratio of 72 dB, alleged to be 79 on the NAB equalization. I'll get into that in a minute. It supports both National Association of Broadcasters and IEC equalization curves. And then also it, I'll get into the issues with the reference level in just a minute. So if we just start from the left-hand side here, there is a knob here. This is the monitor. The monitor is just a volume gain, a gain switch for a little tiny speaker inside. So if you're not listening this through an amplifier, you just want to hear something through the little speaker, this knob will get you there. Underneath it is a pitch control. I'll try to get you closer so you can see that. The pitch control is variable or fixed. I have it set to fixed, but if you want it to be variable, you can switch it, and then you can make the tape go a little bit faster, a little bit slower, depending upon you know what you want. I don't know why you would want that. I mean, for what I use it for, it needs to stay at the fixed level. Then the tape speed. Right now it's green. It's set for 15 inches per second. That's the high range, and you can switch it to low, which will switch it to 7.5 inches per second. And so that's what this switch takes care of. Then on the next group this is the input and output calibration or uncalibrated switches. So if you want to use the input and the output knobs where they have control over what level of signal you're recording in on the input and what level of sound you're reproducing on the output, you can you would adjust that with these 4 knobs. If you set it to calibrated, then these are disabled. They won't work, all right? And I found that actually the output set to calibrated really works well on the tapes that I already have. So that's what that feature does. Now this is the NAB/IEC equalization switch. NAB, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, is the National Association of Broadcasters. IEC stands for the International Electrotechnical Commission. It's also known as CCIR, depending upon what language you speak, I believe. Their difference is the equalization curve that the unit applies to the recorded signal. Tape music records frequencies, low frequencies to high frequencies. NAB applies an equalization curve to both the low frequency and the high frequency, whereas IEC only provides an equalization to the high frequency and apparently not the low frequency from what I understand. So when you see some of these master tapes that are done by some of these companies like the Tape Project and like Acoustic Sounds is also into doing master tapes now. They're very expensive. They're always coming back and saying that they're IEC equalized. So if you don't have a machine that has IEC or CCIR as an equalization setting, you really aren't going to get your money's worth out of those tapes. So that's just something that you need to be aware of. It's just the fact that, you know, this machine allows you to switch between either one. Now the reference level is a bit tricky and it's a little bit more technical. Basically, tape, and I don't want to misstate myself, but I'm going to try to put this down in an easiest form that I can and really explain it. Tape is, you saturate tape with signal at a rate that's stated in something called Nano-Webers per meter. And older tapes, like the older Maxell formulations, would be rated for 240 Nano-Webers per meter, whereas the newest formulations, like the Maxell UDXLs or the UDXLs2, would be spec'd out to do 320 nanometers per second. So this setting on this machine says if you have it set to high, it's going to work at 320 nanowebers per second, and if it's set to low, it's going to do 240 nanowebers per second. I use ATR magnetic tape, the MDS36, that's basically on this machine. You can kind of see it right there. ATR MDS36. It's their 1 mil tape, 3,600 square feet on a reel, and it's rated at 320 nanowebers per second. So I would definitely be keeping my switch set to the high reference level. I think really what it is if you just look and think of it simply as this way. When you're recording music, the record head is essentially printing a signal onto the tape, all right? And so the level of signal and the level of saturation is measured in those Nano-Webers per second, or per meter rather. And so 320 is obviously higher than 240, but that's because the quality of the tape and the newer formulations, you can saturate that with a higher level of signal and it won't distort, all right? So you're getting the most out of what you're paying for, and these new tapes like this, ATR Magnetics, now one of these reels, MDS36, is $88 for this, okay, when just a year ago it was maybe $74. So, you know, you want to make sure you're getting the most out of the product that you're buying, and that's why I have this set at the high reference level. All right, so then moving on, down here you can set the reel size. They're both set to large on both tables, so you can set them to small, large. This is the reproduce, sync, input, record. So if you're recording, you have to have these 4 on, and you would obviously want to press your play and record buttons. We won't do that at the moment. And back to reproduce. Then you also have an edit button. I'm not getting into anything on this tape machine that I don't use, and I don't use edit. Then it's a rewind, a fast forward, stop, play, record, and then you have spool, which is a way that you can, more like pack tape. If you're planning on storing it, it rewinds and fast forwards at a much slower rate, but it keeps the tension at a very even tension, so that if you're about to like store a tape, you're probably not going to listen to it again for quite a while. You would want to spool it, and that will help pack the tape, I think, is maybe the easiest way for me to say that. RTZ is return to 0. So if you're at the end of a tape and you want to go back to the beginning, you can just press RTZ. As long as it started off at this counter level of 0, it's going to take you back to 0. And then it has lock locations and memos where you can set it to memorize certain locations in a tape, and then you can just press it and it'll go to that location and stop when it gets to it. So those are the basic features of it. This unit also had a remote control. When I say remote, it comes with a 15-foot cable, because you have to remember this is older technology and didn't use an IR signaler or radio frequency transmitter. So it does have a long cord that comes with it. I actually have one that will work with this machine on order. I should get it fairly soon. And it's important because if you're trying to record a vinyl record from, say, here, you know, I'm good 8 feet away from the tape deck. Having that remote control handy in your hand when you're over by the turntable is going to be really, really important, to be able to start your tape properly and not mess things up with it. So a word about the reel that you see here. This is the Ampex 456 reel. It's just the reel itself. The tape itself is ATR Magnetics MD S36. I had a stock of old Ampex tapes where the reels were in perfect condition, but the tape itself had started to get sticky and had degenerated. Ampex had a situation with tape at a certain era where it tended to absorb water molecules in the tape, and that tended to make the tape sticky, and it would shed and come apart, and all your pinch rollers and your heads would get this goo all over it, and it was really, really a terrible thing. And so they produced a white paper that was designed to show, well, if you have this problem, you can bake it at a certain temperature in an oven, you know, for a certain length of time, and it would dry it out. I didn't get into all of that. I just take the little screws, unscrew it, pull the metal reel off, dump that old tape, use the metal reel again, and then just, you know, put the new tape on it and just move on. So the new formulations of tape are just so much better than the old ones. All right, so let's take a look over here. This is the Tiak X1000r. This deck was manufactured sometime in the early 1980s. I'm not exactly sure when the manufacture of this particular unit was discontinued. I know that Teac also produced what they call their X1000r, which had a head stack that looked a little bit different, but basically they were very much similar units. This is the X1000r. It's a 4-track tape deck rather than the other one that Tascam I said was a 2-track tape deck. And so basically what you have on a 4-track situation is you got the same tape. You got the same 1/4 width tape, it's 1 mil thick, and you're dividing it in two. And so you add a left and a right channel that's 1/8 inches, but now with the 4-track, you're dividing that 1/8 again. And so what you've got is a 1/16. You've got 4 tracks that are 1/16. It's almost like cassette tape, if you recall that, you know, much more narrow tape. So you've got less tape, less width of tape to record on, but the benefit of it is this machine will record and play in both directions, all right? So this is one of those cases where you get to the end of side 1, you can flip the tape over and play side 2, whereas on the Tascam you cannot do that, all right? So, and just a word about the tape speeds and how much tape and what you get out of this, all right? At 15 inches per second, this thing will spool off 3,600 feet of tape in 48 minutes, all right? Thereabouts. At 7.5 inches per second, you get 1.5 hours, all right? So if you want to record one single album, vinyl record, to tape, at 15 inches, that's about what you're going to get, one record. If you have 2 records that you would like to put on one tape, you would reduce the speed to 7.5 inches per second, and you would be able to fit both of them on this one tape. Over here, on the Tiak, you could basically put 4 albums, so 2 per side, for a total of 3 hours at 7.5 inches per second. Now the other part of it is that this unit plays at 3 3/4 inches per second, so that would presumably give you up to 6 hours of record and playback time, but it does come with its drawback of much lower sound quality, and personally, I don't and never have used it. So that's kind of where we are with that. So on this particular unit, if we just go ahead and start, you got your power button here. And then this one is the reel sizes from small to large. So you can switch between the 10.5 inch reels, or you can put a 7-inch reel on there. And that's the smaller reels. So the speed is low or high, low meaning 3 3/4, high meaning 7.5. Then this is the auto reverse switch. It's either only playing in one direction, or you can set it to where it will rewind and automatically reverse to play backward, or you can do a continuous loop where it will just go back and forth. It'll just continue. It'll get to the end of side 1, it'll automatically click over, come back to the beginning, and just keep doing it, okay? I don't do that. I just usually will just put this on one time. And then there's a pitch control on this as well, where you can sort of alter the speed if something isn't right. Never had to use it. The tape lifter is if you're rewinding or fast forwarding tape, you can lift the heads up, and so you can hear kind of where it is. It would sound like, you know, Alvin and the Chipmunks or something, I guess. It's a feature that I don't use. The tape counter is a digital one, like on the Tascam. The Tascam's tape counter does remember its location for up to a week after power is turned off. The Tiak's tape counter loses its memory if the power is turned off. So if you turn the power off and you had, you know, 35 minutes and 42 seconds, and then when you turn it back on, you're going back to 0 again, all right? It does have features where you can search to 0, where you can search to queue, where you can set a queue and a repeat function in a program, and then this is the clear button, okay? Dupla sync is something I've never used. It's more a dubbing type of a feature from tape to tape. So that's not going to be something I'm interested in. This is the fast rewind, the reverse play, the stop, the forward play, and then the fast forward. And then, of course, it has the record mute, and a pause switch as well. Down here is a pot for a mic. You can put a left and a right microphone in here. This is the a control that would adjust the level of the microphone. This is the line level adjustment, where if you were recording an input, you know, off of your preamp, this is the one that's going to keep your recording level, you'd monitor your recording level. And then this is just the standard output knob, where you can adjust how much signal you're outputting when you're playing back. So I want to also take a minute to kind of go over some of the specifications on this. So as I said before, it's a 4-track, 2-channel stereo open reel tape deck. This has 6 heads, okay? Unlike the other one, Tascam, that has 3. This has a forward erase, a forward record, a forward playback, and then conversely it has the same exact thing in the opposite direction, so a total of 6 heads. This machine will record in both directions. It's a bidirectional record and bidirectional playback. So if you get to the end of side 1 and you don't want to stop the music, you just, you know, you can fade it down, click it, the reverse, it will pick back up and just start recording immediately in the opposite direction. It's very handy, and actually it's a good feature. I actually do kind of like it. So this machine, as I mentioned, will play at 7.5 inches per second or 3 3/4 inches per second. It has a stated frequency response of 30 hertz at 34 kilohertz. The signal to noise ratio, this is where it gets really interesting. On this unit, 65 dB with the dBx out and 100 dB with the dBx in. It's stated as having channel separation of 50 decibels, a fast wind speed of approximately 100 seconds for 1,800 feet of tape, which would be a 7-inch reel rather than the 10.5. But this thing really does go pretty good on the fast forward and rewind. It has very strong fast forward and rewind. It is 17 inches wide by 17 13/16 inches high or tall, 10 5/16 inches deep, and weighs 48.5 pounds. Now, it has a feature that to some extent did and then some extent did not fare well, I guess, in the audio community. But it has this feature called dBx, okay, it's right here. And you can see the green light is on, the dBx on this machine is in. And what the dBx basically does is it encodes at a 2-to-1 ratio. It can encode 100 decibels of dynamic range into 50 dB, okay, of dynamic range. And then in the expansion mode, it expands at a 1-to-2 ratio and it perfectly restores 100 decibels of dynamic range. So basically what it means is that you can get 100 dB of dynamic range on a tape with the dBx set to the in, all right? And I can attest to the fact that these tapes sound so much better using the dBx system than without. The drawback is if you encode a tape with the dBx enabled, you can't play it back on anything that doesn't have a dBx capability or dBx1 capability. So my brother has the Pioneer RT909. It's a 10.5-inch open reel tape deck, you know, just similar to this, except it does not support dBx. If I take one of my dBx tapes to his house to play it, it's going to sound terrible, all right? And that's just the fact of it. So it didn't really catch on, I don't think. And I think one of the problems is back in the day, in the late 70s, I had a friend who bought a dBx noise reduction system for his vinyl turntable, all right? The idea back then, you know, the quality of vinyl wasn't quite as good then as it has gotten now. With the Clarity vinyl and Virgin vinyl, it's very, very good quality vinyl, extremely quiet. Back in those days, we were always having issues with surface noise and the little pops and clicks, and the dBs was one of these things that would prevent that. It would actually stop that from getting into the signal. But what I always found with it was it just sort of deadened the sound. I mean, the liveliness of the record just went away with it, and I never liked it personally. I would rather have surface noise and pops and clicks if I'm at least getting a good amount of air in the sound. And that's what the dBx system that I remember used to do on the vinyl side of it, it just really killed that. It just squeezed that part of the life of the record out, and all in the name of making the record quieter. And so I never liked it, I never enjoyed it, I wouldn't have bought it or invested in it. But in this system, on this tape, this part of it, at least here, really does a great job, and I won't record anything on this tape deck without using that feature. So the next thing is it has the record mode that's on or off when you're recording. Then it has these 3 switches, which are very similar to the reference level switch that I showed you earlier on the Tascam machine. This machine will also do 320 Nano-Webers per meter and 240, but it just gives it to you in LH1, LH2, and EE. All right, so the EE is used when like Maxell, I'm using the Maxell as the example, when they came out with their UDXL and their UDXL2 tapes that were, you could record up to 320 Nano-Webers per meter of signal, then you would use this switch. This machine has been up to my tech, who has completely recalibrated it and serviced it and done everything to keep this machine running in perfect tip-top condition. Both of them, by the way, have been to him. But he asked me, what tape do you predominantly use? And I told him I'm using ATR Magnetics MVS36, and he said, I'm going to set the equalization on this for that tape on LH2, leave it in, and don't change it, okay? And so that's basically the way that it's been ever since then. The only other thing I want to mention is how does, if you ask, how does the automatic reverse feature actually work? And the way it works is at the leader, the tape leader, right before you get to the end, you put a magnetic strip on the outside of it so that it doesn't touch the heads, but it will hit this bar. And when the contact of that metal strip between this roller and this bar touch each other, it activates the circuit to automatically turn it in the other direction. All right, and so that's how that works right there. So this machine also works really, really well. It's a good machine, and really do enjoy it. I like the sound of it. The other machine is also an extremely good machine. It's just one is a little bit different than the other. This Tascam was really set up to be able to play those expensive master tapes, the ones that you might see from a place like Tape Project that's done, the last 15 years or more maybe. They've been very heavily involved in reproducing master tapes of multiple genres, a lot of classical music and jazz, and they're getting their material right off of the original master tapes, redubbing them onto direct to tape, and the sound quality, I've heard them, they're really, really good. And also Acoustic Sounds now has a range of master tapes that they're doing, some really exciting titles. The downside of it is, wow, they're expensive. $450 a title, all right? That's not cheap. So this has been called the most expensive audio format on the planet, and I gotta believe it's true. If you wanted to buy a brand new manufactured tape machine, there aren't very many out there these days. There are a couple. Ballfinger is a company, I think they're German. It's about $30,000 for one of those. So, a lot of us try to pick up these older machines for a lot less money and then hope they're in good enough condition to where you can find a qualified technician who really knows their way around these things, that they can, service them, that they can double check all the specifications, make sure the units are, performing up to specifications as far as tape tensions and, head alignments and the condition of the heads, the quality of the heads, electronics, whether or not you have any caps in there that need to be replaced, whether you got problems on your power supply boards, so forth and so on. But I've had both of mine done. I'm very fortunate that they're in excellent running condition. I'm extremely happy with them. The other thing is that the Tiak also has its own RC100 remote control, 15 feet of cable. Really, really handy to be able to work the full functionality of the machine right from your chair, or again, if you're recording to it, to be able to take it close to your turntable so that you can get your starts and stop points where you need to be. So I've gone on a lot longer than I expected. These are not the types of videos I usually like to get too long-winded with, because people don't want to sit and spend a half an hour listening to me talk, and I don't blame them. I don't blame you guys, okay? So look, that's it. If you like it, give us a thumbs up. If you think it's worthwhile, give us a subscribe. We'll always like to try to come back and make some interesting content for you. And until next time, I've got some other ideas and some things I'm working on, and I will be back. Have a good weekend. Peace out. Enjoy your life. I forgot to mention, anyone who's really serious about getting into tape as a hobby really needs to invest in a good quality bulk eraser. In this case, this is a Geneva. It's pretty heavy duty. It's very powerful. It will erase through the metal reel, and that's the big deal, is be able to put a reel on to the eraser and have the power of the magnetism strong enough to get completely through both sides of a metal reel to erase the tape and condition the tape realistically so that you can re-record over it. I forgot to mention that when I was making the first tape. So somewhere in this tape, I have to work that in, or at the end. We'll see how it goes. All right, we'll get you later.